Hi, I want to talk to you about putting humour in a business presentation. Now, first of all, is this a good idea? Is it a good idea to put humour in a business presentation? I'm going to say yes, but then I'm someone that people pay a lot of money to help them put humour into a business presentation. So it's a bit like going to a motorbike dealer and saying, motorbikes, are they a good idea? Yes, buy a motorbike. So I think it's a good idea, and let me see if I can persuade you, because far too few people actually put any kind of humour in a business presentation. So if you do, you're going to stand out. People are going to remember you, and you're more likely to get rebooked if it's a conference. If you're a professional speaker, you're more likely to get more speaking engagements off the back of it. But any kind of business speaker, you're more likely to sell whatever sort of stuff it is that you're trying to sell, services. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know your business. This camera only works one way. I can't see you. I can't look into your computer or your laptop or your iPad or whatever you're watching this. I can't tell what you do. Right, okay, so let's talk a little bit about humour. First of all, humour is not the same as jokes. Jokes are a bad idea in business presentations. So jokes are when you say, oh, here's a funny one, and three men go into a pub and blah, 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 and one of them, don't do that. Don't do jokes. As soon as you say you're going to do a joke, it's going to put pressure on your audience, and a few things are going to happen. One is they'll fold their arms. If you ever say, here's something funny, they'll think, well, we'll be the judge of that. Then you start doing a joke, and it might be a long one, and halfway through they realise they've heard it before, or they get to the punchline, you get to the punchline and they realise it wasn't worth the wait, or it might be in bad taste, or it might just upset somebody, or they might be swearing in it. Don't swear. Never swear in business presentations. So don't do jokes. Jokes will put pressure on your audience, and then they won't know what to do. They might not get it, they might not find it funny, it might upset people. Don't, just no. So jokes, I'm not going to say any more about that, just jokes, no. Stories, yes. Funny stories, yes. Especially true stories, especially stories that have happened to you, absolutely, definitely, yes. But I'm not saying don't put any funny lines in, but just not jokes. So a joke would be where it's almost like you step outside, you think, and people print off Tommy Cooper, can't even say his name, Tommy Cooper jokes off the internet, don't they? Not like that, like that. Don't do that. Why would anyone want to put stuff like that in? So don't go printing jokes off the internet. The best thing, tell a true story, preferably from first-hand experience, and then do what I call an afterthought. So there's the serious line and then a funny thought that comes after, and it's just that instinctive thing that comes straight into your head. Now, for those observations, you're going to need to carry around a notebook. So in that cupboard behind me, I've got hundreds of notebooks. I've just picked out 10 of them here. That's number 18, and that's number 23. And in there are just funny little things that I have written down from things I've seen, maybe funny signs I've seen, funny announcements I've heard, funny things I've seen in the news. And I thought, oh, I'll tell you what would be a funny thing to say about that. Now, I'm not going to give you an example of a funny thing because I do these sort of talks all the time, and a lot of people I've found, rather than listen to what I'm saying and how to do it, they just write down the funny line and then they start using it, and I start seeing it at events. So I'm not going to give you any of my funny lines. You'll have to work them out yourself. But carry them down and write stuff. I'll give you 3 good ways of getting a laugh, particularly at the start of a presentation. So I call it TLC. So the T is topical, the L is local, and the C is the conference. It could be a workshop, but TLW doesn't mean anything like tender loving care. So T, something topical. Say something that's in the news and then do a funny line off the back of it. And again, it's that instinctive thing. I call it the afterthought. So let's think about what's in the news. Well, at the moment, it's all about lockdown and coronavirus and stuff like that. And a lot of that is a bit grim and not funny. So I definitely wouldn't do anything about coronavirus, but I would do funny material about lockdown and how it's affecting people. So the distinction being people die of coronavirus, but lockdown, we're not dying of that, but it's impacting our lives. And you'll get a sort of shared feeling in the room where people think, oh yeah, I've had that. So say something topical, but avoid anything to do with politics, because you don't want half the audience to hate you, even though the other half will love you if you appeal to their politics. The other half will hate you. Steer clear of that. Try and do stories that are of general interest to people, where it would be like a shared feeling in the room where people think, oh yeah, I noticed that. So these are the sort of things that someone like Billy Connolly or any observational comic, have you ever noticed that? And just mention a few things that you've seen. The local, just pick on something that is local to where you are. So if ever I'm speaking in a city that I've not been to before, the first thing I do is I'm on Wikipedia, chapping away, finding something out about that city and saying something funny off the back of it. So I will give you an example here, because this is something I'm pretty sure nobody can nick. I did a big conference once in Dublin for a big computer firm, and they had a very strange region. Their region was UK, Ireland and South Africa, UKISA. And it was in Dublin. People came from all over UK, Ireland and South Africa for this event. And so when I flew into Dublin, I got a taxi to my hotel, and I said to the taxi driver, tell me something about Dublin. I'm hosting this 3-day conference and I want some stuff that I can welcome all these foreign visitors to Dublin. And he told me loads of stuff. None of it was really relevant to what I wanted, but I kept digging and digging, and after about half an hour he said that all the statues in Dublin, all the tourist attraction statues, have the real name that the locals give them and then a rhyming name. So there was the statue of Molly Malone. You know the song Molly Malone wheeled her wheelbarrow through the streets broad and narrow, singing cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh her. So she's there with a wheelbarrow, and they've got the official name for it, but the locals call it the tart with the cart. And then there's another lady who's in a fountain in the water, and they call that the floozy in the jacuzzi. And then by the side of the river Liffey, there's this great big spike going up. It's the Millennium Spike, and they call it the Rod to God, or if they've had a few beers, they call it the Stiffy by the Liffey. So all well and good. I thought, that's good. I can welcome the people and say, did you know all the statues have these rhyming names? But because the region for this conference was UKISA, I tucked that away behind my head, welcomed people at the start, did the stuff about the statues, and then introduced the chief executive of the company and says, please welcome the geezer from UKISA. And he came on to applause, and that was an ideal way to start the conference. Nice little icebreaker. And it's not hilarious, but the audience appreciated it because they knew I'd done it specially for them, because Dublin, as far as I know, is the only place where they have statues that also have rhyming names, and this computer company is the only one I know with a region called UKISA. So it made it bespoke to them. And I often think, particularly at the start of any presentation, you want to make the audience believe that you're doing it just for them and you haven't done it 100 times before. You know, if it's a business pitch that you're traipsing around the world with, you probably have done it a few times before, but you want that audience on that day, whether it's virtually or in real life, to believe that you're doing it just for them. And that's why something topical, something local. And then the third thing is the C, conference. It could be workshop or anything, but C works better for tender loving care. And the way the C works is you mention something that's already happened at the conference, at the event. So it might be something that a previous speaker has said. So that will make you look really good, really clever, really slick. If you reference something a previous speaker said, especially if you can then put your own little spin on it. It might be something in the room. First thing I do when I'm speaking at a business event is look around the room. What is there that I can work with? Go into the breakfast room where the delegates are having breakfast. What can I say about that? Is there something about the menu? Is there something about the breakout sessions that are coming later? What can I mention and then put a little bit of a funny spin on it that will make them think he's done that specially for us? Let's just talk a little bit about stories then. So I mentioned that stories are a good idea. If you think about the school nativity play at school, where you've got the narrator, Mary and Joseph came to Bethlehem. There were no rooms at the inn. It sounds like this play might be somewhere in West Yorkshire by the sounds of it. I don't know why I've picked that. So that's the narrator, the person reading out the book, describing the stuff. And then you've got Mary and Joseph. Let me in. We want to come and stay. Oh, there is no room. You must go away. Quite broad, isn't he? The stable. Actually, why they don't get turned away from the stable, do they? They're let in. He was nice. It was the hotel manager that was booked up because it was Christmas. So anyway, the point is, with stories, don't have a narrator, or if you think of the way a stand-up comedian would do it, they just become the characters. So don't have, and then she said this, so then I said this. Just become her, become him. So I particularly like the format. If you're relating something about a conversation you had with someone, so I said to my manager, and then he said, don't keep saying he said, she said, just act it out. So if it might be you would, and this is the one time when you don't have eye contact with your audience. So this is like being in a play. You know, in a play, theatre, you don't look at all the audience. You kind of ignore them. So you'll say, oh, so what happened here? Oh, yes, we've got some people interested in this. Oh, and what do they say about that? And become the characters. And if you're taller than the person you're talking to, look down. If you're shorter, look up. Maybe give them a slightly higher voice or a slightly deeper voice or whatever. as ways of illustrating things. And honestly, that just lifts it up. It gives that little bit of theatricality, but make sure that you keep your status. And that's one of the big things I want to talk to you about now is status. This is where lots of people go wrong in a business presentation. They think, I want to be funny, so they start acting the fool. And the trouble is, if you start acting the fool, people will start laughing at you and not with you. So you want to make sure that you're always a wit, which is high status, and not a clown, because the people will laugh with a wit, they'll laugh at a clown. And you might think, well, I want some laughs, that's good. But the trouble is, if you become a clown, if you metaphorically put on a big red nose and big floppy shoes, and if you don't know whether this is happening, if you get into your car and the doors fall off, then you have become a clown. If that happens, although you'll get laughs, at the end, when you then do your big pitch, whatever it is, if you're trying to sell them something, if you're trying to change their behaviour, if it's motivate a team, whatever it is you're doing at the end, they won't believe you because you're the funny person that was the clown earlier with the big red nose and the floppy feet. So don't become a clown, keep your status. You might like to think of all the comedians or entertainers you like and think, are they one that wear a jeans and t-shirt and fall around the stage? Don't become like that. Or are they one that wears a suit, keeps their high status, and they show you stuff that jointly you laugh at? That is, as a business speaker, that's what you want to be, a wit, not a clown. Just a few other little things that can make stories better. You might like to put a voice in if you're good at doing impressions, but just do that very, very sparingly, and don't mimic anyone that's at the event. If the managing director's from the northeast, don't do a Geordie accent, don't do an American accent if you're overseas, because they've all heard, everybody that has an accent has all heard other people with that accent trying to do it, and it's not funny and it's usually not very good. But just little tiny bits in stories. Often in a story that I'm telling, I will give someone an accent that they didn't actually have. So for example, I have a story about I was doing my Edinburgh Fringe show. I did a 1 hour Edinburgh Fringe show on called What Are You Talking About? And it's about how to put humour in business presentations, but I did it as a sort of cabaret comedy show in the evening at a Fringe venue. And I premiered it in South Africa, and I was billed as the 11th most famous BBC Jeremy, after Jeremy Clarkson, Jeremy Paxman, Jeremy Vine, Jeremy Bowen, Jeremy Ball. People always forget Jeremy Ball, don't they? The East Midlands Today social affairs correspondent. And on the way into the theatre, I was greeting all the audience, and this lady said, "Oh, you're not the BBC Jeremy I thought you were going to be." It's in Johannesburg, remember? And I said, "Oh, sorry, which one were you expecting?" She said, "No, I can't remember his name, but he's not you." And I said, "If you can't remember his name, how do you know he's not me?" And she said, "No, because I know what he looks like, and he's tall and good looking." Now, I, in this show, thought I want to use that story as a way of illustrating how hostile an audience can be at the start. Welcome to Johannesburg. But the problem was I already had a South African accent in a story just before that, which was a story about, I once gave a business presentation in South Africa at Emperor's Palace, big conference venue, and I split my trousers just before I went on stage. Bending down to plug in my laptop, I split my trousers just as the guy was saying, "Please welcome from the United Kingdom with a talk on how to use humour, Jeremy Nicholas." And I came out and wandered about for 5 minutes like a space invader, back, keeping always front onto the audience. Now the problem being, and at the end, the punchline was this big guy. I said, "Are there any questions?" And this guy said, "Now tell me this, do you always wear those trousers for this talk?" So the problem is I had a South African accent, and then this next story had a woman with a South African accent. And I thought, it's a shame to do the same accent when I've got such a wide range that I'd like to do. So I made her Welsh. In the show, I made her Welsh, but in real life, she'd been South African. "Oh, you're not the BBC Jeremy I thought you were going to be." And instantly, it just gives it that little bit of a lift. So just do impressions if you can, but not if it's going to make you be a clown. And then just a few closing things really on where you can go wrong. One of the things that can go wrong is people might not get it. They might not work out why it's funny. And the reason that can happen is you haven't made it clear enough. You haven't made it clear why it's funny. So if you think a funny line is basically a setup, like in volleyball, you set it up and then someone else comes in and spikes it, bangs it down, set it up, boom. That is any funny line. So if the setup is right and there's punchline, boom, that's why I call it punch, because it's like that. If that's right, you should get a laugh. If you don't, then there's something wrong somewhere. Now, the punchline like that, sometimes people do it a bit too soft, like, and they'll get to the funny bit and then they'll say a few extra words like, yeah, so that happened, or yeah, like I say. And as soon as you say a few extra words after the punchline, which should be a boom, stop, then people will wait. Because if you say those few extra words, they'll lean forward, stop laughing. Sorry, what? Is he going to say something else funny? What, the funny man? What's he saying? What was that? So don't. So what I like to do, set up, punchline, and then while they're laughing, if they're laughing, drink some water like that, and it gives them time to laugh. And that pause does two things. One is it gives them time to laugh, and one is it gives them permission to laugh. Sometimes you'll have to wait for maybe 2 minutes before you get a laugh, but they will eventually laugh out of nervous embarrassment. So do make sure that you pause. I reckon with most business speakers, the reason they don't get laughs is because they just put their head down and they plow on and they don't wait for the laugh. So wait for that laugh. Pause. 2 reasons: permission to laugh, time to laugh. And then the other thing is that maybe your setup wasn't right. You know, you can't come in and do a good spike if the setup's not right. So as a kid, one of my favourite sorts of jokes were those funny books that they had in the Beano comic. And it would be, have you ever read Haunted House by Hugo First? Or Horse Racing by Willie Bett? And my favourite one was 50 Years in the Saddle by Captain Sawbum. Now as a 10-year-old, I loved that, mainly because it included the word bum. And so I'd walk around the playground saying 50 Years in the Saddle by Captain Sawbum, and everyone would go, ha, 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 ha. And then one day I heard a bigger boy telling it from the year above, and he said 50 Years in the Saddle by Major Bumsaw. And I thought, oh, that's better, yes. Because really they're just laughing at mine because of the word bum. But it's made your bum sore, Major Bumsaw. And I thought, Captain Sawbum is rubbish. That's why, well, I would say I was getting quite a good result, I think, because I was telling the bum bit very well. But get it absolutely right, because otherwise, well, the way you'll know is whether or not people laugh. And so always record, have a device with you and just record on that. And on the way home from every gig, listen, did that get a laugh? If not, wind it back. Why? Oh, it's because I didn't tell them that this was taking place on an aeroplane. And that's why when he said, I'm going to open the door and leave, that was funny. You always need to make sure all the information is there and in the right order, and make sure that the surprise is at the end and they release the actual bit where the laugh is the last few words. And sometimes it's just a question of flipping the sentence. And the thing with humour is you need to practice it. Far too many people just try and busk it and just try and make it up as they go along, and that will not laugh. So I do specialise in this sort of stuff. I do a thing called Putting the You in Humour, which is all about putting your personal stories in. I do a group program called Talking Funny for Speakers, because I find that works really well. I do lots of one-to-one coaching, particularly with chief execs that have to do big conferences and they want to get some laughs, but they want to keep their credibility and they don't want to do a stand-up comedy course. So my course, Talking Funny for Speakers, is all about getting laughs but keeping your credibility. And the reason I do it as a group program is that the best way to get feedback is to have other people laughing, because if I'm doing it one-on-one with a person, I can tell you whether I find it funny, but if there's 10 people in the group and you can see that 8 of them are laughing, you think, well, that's definitely something worth doing. So that's it. Do experiment with using humour. If it's not for you, don't do it. You know, there's no point trying to have an act that is really not you. Like, you know, it's no good being slightly good at knife throwing. You want to be absolutely spot on, particularly if you've got an assistant that enjoys the use of all of their limbs. So make sure that you have a go at it, and then if humour doesn't work for you, then just say, right, that's it. I'm not going. I'll leave the humour to other people. But I would encourage everyone to try, because so few people do. If you do it, you will stand out. I hope that's being useful. I'm Jeremy Nicholas, jeremynicholas.co.uk. Get in touch with me if you want a PDF handout of my top tips on how to put humour in presentations. But other than that, have a great day.